right, so I'm currently on the line with Jay. He's another one of the musicians that reached out about the current interview series that's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the opportunity to introduce himself.
Hey there, my name is Julio. I am from New York, Unionville, New York originally. Grew up in the city and then moved recently to Los Angeles, California, which is where I'm currently based. I am primarily an instrumentalist. I've played with orchestras around the country and also venues around the world, Philippines, Cuba, as well as serving as a backing musician for musicians like Burna Boy, and released some independent work as well with friends you can check out online. We'll talk about that later. But such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks for giving me the time. So I always like to start in the beginning. When did you first find music, and what about it was appealing to you and made you want to, follow that life path?
So it's pretty customary, at least in Filipino cultures, for singing to be a large part of just how we grow up. I'm sure in the days before karaoke machines, there was a lot of group singing because with karaoke machines now, music sort of is integrated in many Filipino families' daily culture. And it's pretty uncommon to go to a party and not have some sort of singing involved. And so I got involved really early on, church choir, through singing at family members' weddings. And also, as I started going to school and whatnot, of course, I was exposed to music in public schools. I started playing violin back in sixth grade, sort of a late start here in New York because my family moved around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started playing, I realized, first of all, I was one of the worst in the class. And second of all, that it was something that, after a few rough months, was something I really, really enjoyed. And so I'm really grateful, sort of stuck to it, and am now playing. And I play a few other instruments, primarily am actually a violist now, but still do a lot of work on violin as well as on cello, and sort of whatever instrument is needed. I'll try and get my hands on it.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you started playing at or in sixth grade. Was that part of like the standard school curriculum, or were you doing it, private lessons?
So thankfully, I did go to school where they hadn't cut the orchestra program in public schools because I didn't have access to private teaching until I auditioned at the new school, got a scholarship back in 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a year there. But for the first 4 years of life, everything that I did was in the public schools and then at home. And I was really lucky. People were really supportive actually at my public schools. And so I often would stay after school until 5 or 6 o'clock just practicing.
Awesome. And so once you kind of did get out of public school, did you go to university for to major in your instrument?
Yes, and I actually did leave 2 years earlier. When I was 14, I auditioned for this high school up in Michigan called Interlochen. Was there for 2 years. Was very lucky to be there and have the chance to attend on a scholarship. It's a really, really wonderful place, although in the middle of the woods, and of course very different for a kid from New York. Was there for 2 years and studied a lot of different stuff, poetry, actually some theater as well, and of course orchestra, classical music at a really high level. That's where I first actually started to really seriously dabble with other genres as well, because they had a really strong singer-songwriter program there that I had the chance to collab with some. After that, I was at the Manhattan School of Music for my undergrad, and then the Juilliard School for my master's, and learned a lot of skills there.
Excellent. So the entire time that you were getting, a very formal education in music, what were kind of like your hopes for once you got out of school?
There's a lot of thought actually placed into this from the beginning, even as people are often like, oh, these programs don't really prepare you for the real world. They classical programs do prepare you in one sense for a real world of orchestra jobs, and occasionally some solo opportunities and chamber music opportunities that you might have. but I was a little unsatisfied with that. I'd grown up, not with orchestras or any kind of classical music in the forefront of my mind. It wasn't the music that like I grew up listening to. Certainly not the family, not the family music either. And so I really dove deep into first of all the music that I really liked to listen to. I was really glad to in my first years live with a lot of jazz musicians who would turn me on to music that they really liked. Often wouldn't be jazz, it'd be a lot of jazz inflected music, but not necessarily exactly what they were studying.
Hmm.
I also drew on the music that I both grew up listening to, you know, as uh, as a person who grew up in a primarily Black and Latinx environment. A lot of the soul that um, I grew up listening to, soul and gospel, and indigenous Filipino music, both in Western forms and non-Western forms, and that was all I thought like an incredible second training to have, one that I pursued, of course, outside of the school, but in New York, the city is your school. The city is a microcosm of the world.
Right, right.
It's a code with the most languages spoken out of any place in the world. So it's really,
Excellent.
really incredible to be there. And I'm really lucky, of course, I grew up there.
Sure. So once you did get out of university, what was the motivation to move to Los Angeles then?
I'm also very lucky to, after auditions in 2020, and thankfully could take these auditions before everything went downhill. Um, I got invited to be a part of the Los Angeles Orchestra Fellowship, which is a program based here to basically get more people of color from underrepresented backgrounds in classical music playing.
Hmm.
And they've also been instrumental in actually hooking it up with a lot of non-classical programs that have nevertheless, been open to calling people from this fellowship and working with them. So a lot of recording sessions have happened, a lot of live performances have happened at the Hollywood Bowl and whatnot. And I'm here just playing and trying to figure out how to make it here. It's very much a different place. Los
Hmm.
Angeles music scene, of course, incredibly unique. It's the center of a lot of TV and film even now, and so
Hmm.
so much happens here that you just cannot repeat somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, that's an amazing opportunity too. That'd be very difficult to pass up. All right. So, with all of the work that you are doing, are you also pursuing music, like more of on like the street level as well, outside of the orchestra scene, like playing with other musicians and doing the regular gigging type stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that sort of stuff comes and goes, of course, with the closures. We're all balance a very fine line with COVID safety, and of course, making sure that people are even comfortable coming out to go see shows and concerts. Um, there's work happening actually on the East Coast for me, so I do oftentimes will be flying back and forth. Um, in December, I'm lucky I'll be spending most of December on the East Coast. A lot of work in New York, just, playing with combos or like playing with different bands, as well as like a 2 city run out with this man Tom McGovern, playing Boston and Philly at the beginning of the season. And of course, at the end of that season, we've got a Christmas concert at Carnegie Hall with this program. But uh, I'm just really happy that A, anything can come back, and that B, I have access to so many different genres and so many different ways of like making music together with people.
So those shows that you're doing, are those with orchestras and like smaller ensembles, or is that more in the like rock lineup kind of band type thing?
Yeah, it yeah, it really does actually go the entire it sort of spans the whole spectrum.
Hmm.
Um, this stuff in Boston, Philly will be your typical band, sort of a variety show type of setup. And anytime one of the wonderful things about New York is that there's just so much live jazz. Like any night you can go see live jazz, and of
Mhm.
course the people there advertised on the bill might not even be there. um, and sometimes you go to a gig or you go to a jam, you don't know what the instrumentation is going to be at all.
Mhm.
It's always fun as a string player. Oftentimes, you're the only person of your type there who's plugged in as a bowed string musician, and it's really a lot of fun working with that.
Awesome. So, where do you want to see, your career get to in like 5 or 10 years?
I would just absolutely love to keep doing what I'm doing, like at the highest levels, where I can have one night where I'm playing a show with an artist, you know, being in the back line. Another show I'm like playing at a bar, maybe like heading my own like band, and then another night maybe I'm playing with an orchestra. And I think this sort of versatility is something that I really really value, like in any capacity. I don't really do well with doing the same thing night after night, day after day.
Mhm.
Uh, really, really wonderful that I've had the opportunity to take part in so many different things, and I hope it keeps going.
Hmm. Definitely. So, in all the time that you have been, learning the instrument and then also playing with all of these different groups, what are some of your favorite memories that you've encountered or that have happened to you in all of that time?
Hmm, so many things. I think one of the things that feels like a sort of a crowning moment. Remember, this was, I believe, the last time that Aretha Franklin ever played live. I was at this AIDS Foundation gala that Elton John, um, I guess his foundation was running as at this big old church in New York, St. John the Divine. Um, and he had invited a bunch of different artists to, of course, be entertainment there. I was part of a crew with this organization called Young Arts. They do a really wonderful job of um, funding artists under the age of, I believe, 19 in uh, the U.S. and do this whole competition and whatnot. Anyway, one of the perks was we got called up one day to go and play the show, and we didn't know too much about it. I was just ready, for many things. I just throw it on the calendar and then take a look at the music and and make sure that that part is settled to get there in one piece, hopefully. um they line us up backstage. Of course, there's all these people. They line us up to go on stage. It's all a blur, really. And who's there introducing us but like Neil Patrick Harris. And then we a little starstruck. We get back down, and then after us is Aretha, and she just, maybe like is 85 pounds at that point. She's so small. I didn't, of course, she was very private with her life, so many people didn't know that she was, very sick. Um, but nevertheless, she went out and sang. She sounded as good as ever, I thought. Um, and I'll always treasure that, like being able to, I guess, warm the stage for somebody who I'd grown up, hearing her records around the house.
Hmm.
It was really really special.
That is very cool. All right. So, where can people take a listen to any of the stuff that you're working on or, find the orchestras you're playing in?
So I've got my website. That's jayjulio.com, JAYJULIO. I've got also a bit of music on Spotify, and you can always keep refreshing and seeing what gets put out there. Um, the thing that most often will get updated is actually my Instagram. So if you follow that, you'll have a pretty good idea of where I'll be playing. So that's JAY.JULIO on Insta. And yeah.
Awesome. And so I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last words. So just a message that, you feel kind of resonates with you that you want to put out there.
Yeah. I definitely want to shout out like everyone that has helped me out, and also wanted to think about just all the people who certainly early, especially early on in my life, encouraged me without any idea of, if I was going to go to music or not. Um, that unconditional support without like any expectations really does so much for students, whether they're students like in the public school program or your own private students, or just kids that you mentor, kids in your own family. Having that kind of support, especially in such a fragile artistic field like music, it's really important, especially early on when people are trying to develop that kind of confidence. So, just hoping that we can all remember what it felt like to be supported in that way, and hopefully we can pass that on as we all get older and as we all, start to develop our own sort of mentoring relationships.